to another exciting episode of Timeout with Ochoche Emmanuel. Then it's going to be an amazing time together. I'm already bumped up for today's episode. So before I go right into what I have for you today, if you've not subscribed on our YouTube channel, I encourage that you do so. If you're not followed on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, I encourage that you do so you don't miss out on all of the amazing content that we'll be posting and updating you with. So I'll go right into what we have for you today. I'll be talking about something that's very crucial to each and every one of us, and then that is maximizing our process season. And then in today's episode, we're talking about maximizing our process season, how important it is for us to maximize our process season, and then what process is in general. So I took out time to look out some definitions of what process is. So I'll just read out a couple of definitions of what process is. So first, according to Webster's dictionary, process is a natural phenomenon marked by gradual changes that lead towards a particular result. Also, process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. Also, process can be defined as a series of progressive interdependent steps by which an end is attained. So I define process as a step-by-step method in which an end is formed, is shaped, influenced, and actualized. I'll take that again. Process is defined as a step-by-step method in which an end is formed, shaped, influenced, and actualized. So each and every one of us have to go through a process season. We would go through different method, different steps towards actualizing the end, which is maximizing our purpose, maximizing destiny, and all of that. So process is what makes the end of a thing, an assignment, a course, a reality. It is what makes your purpose, it is what makes my purpose a reality. It is the step-by-step method we would use to actualize what God has proposed for us. So you see why it is important for us to maximize our process season. So process is one thing each and every one of us must go through in order to get to the place that God has called us for. It is the season that we have to go through to get to the point and to the place that God has called us for. Each and every one of us cannot escape our process season. We have to maximize our process season to get to the place and the points that God has called all of us to. So and then process is one thing that we can determine. It is that phase of our life that is part of our blueprint. It is part of God's blueprint for us as individuals. So I can't determine my process. You can't determine your process. You can't determine what you will go through to get to that place that God has called you for. So it is part of our blueprints as individuals. It's part of God's blueprint for us in general. So before we get to the place that God has proposed for us, we have to go through a process season rather. So we all have a process that we must go through, and then it is important that we go through it because that process season is what will sustain us when we get to maximizing that season of process. That process season is what will sustain us when we get to the place that God has called us for. So sustenance is dependent on how well we maximize our process season. So God will allow us go through a phase. God will allow us go through a process so that that is what will sustain us at the place that God has called us for. The place that God has called you, the place that God has called me, the purpose that what God has proposed for each and every one of us will be a reality when we go through and when we maximize our process season. So we'll see in scriptures how God took people through tremendous stories, tremendous results that a lot of people had from scriptures, and then each and every one of them had to go through a process season before they actually started making results, or they started having results, or started changing their world, as the case may be. So God will not just none of us God doesn't just drop all of us on earth and then we just go right into maximizing our purpose or working in where God has called us for. We have to go through a process season for us to get to the place that God has called us for. So that is why process is very, very, very crucial to each and every one of us. So nobody just get started. Like, you don't just come to it and then just get started. I think the only person that was privileged to have that was Adam, and then we know how it went. But basically, each and every one of us, for us to get to the place that God has called us for, we have to go through a process. We have to maximize our process. So in maximizing our process season, one thing that is very, very important, one thing that's very crucial for us to have as either a virtue, for us to have as a character, for us to have as a lifestyle, is patience. Because if you don't have patience, you will run out of your process season. A lot of people, I think we as young people, or no matter the age bracket, who can relate to this, you'd see that a lot of people don't have patience as a lifestyle. They don't have it as a virtue. They don't have it as a character. That is why you see people would want to skip or jump corners, cut corners rather, and then just because they don't want to, they want to get the end without going through the process, and then it is not possible. Even if you would see few things that looks like results, but you won't be able to sustain it, because it is when you go through your process season that is what determines you being able to sustain the place that God has proposed for you. So we would see that our manifestation season, as far as much as possible, we all want to we all want to get to that point where we'll be enjoying the manifestations of God in our life, enjoying purpose and all of that. As much as we want to enjoy that manifestation season, if we don't have patience as a virtue, if we don't have patience as a character or as a lifestyle, we'll just jump out of our process season. So I don't know where you're watching from. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what your process season looks like. But I encourage that you stay glued to God, have patience as a virtue, and then hold on and enjoy your process season, because what you're going through is just a process that would eventually has a time lapse. And then when that time and that season is maximized effectively, you get to the place that God has called you, and you'll be able to sustain each and everything that God has proposed and planned for you. So one of the character I like in the Bible is Joseph. And then obviously he went through a process. His process started with first his dreams, him having dreams and all of that, and then being a faithful son, and then his brothers selling him off. And then it's funny, because if he hadn't gone through some of the things he went through, he wouldn't have been fit for the role or the office of the prime minister. So he went through his dreams. His process started with dreams, then his being a faithful servant, being a faithful son rather, and then his brothers selling him off, and then getting into the house of Potiphar, and then from Potiphar's house going to jail, and from jail, even in jail, the jailer kept him in charge of the prisoners. Like, imagine being a prisoner and then having control over prisoners. That's something else. But each and every step that he went through was what made him Joseph. His process season is what made him. So each of those processes was important to his destiny. It was important to him being the prime minister of Egypt. So your process season will make you one way or the other. That is basically what determines. That is what will make you you. That is what my process season is. What will make me me, and your process season is what will make you, or what will make you you. So you can't skip one part, because each part is very important to your destiny. One other character also is King David. He also went through a process. He went from being a headsman, basically, because he was in charge of his father's flocks. He went from being in charge of his father's flocks, then gravitated to going to serve his brothers, from his brothers, and then he landed in the palace, serving after killing Goliath. He ended up in the palace, and then that was like the manifestation of him maximizing his process season, because he maximized his process season. His being a headsman, being catering for his father's flocks, being responsible over his father's flocks and his father's affair, and then that was what landed him in the palace. So each and every step, each and every process that he went through was very important for him being the king of Egypt. So if he had missed one, it would have affected his season of manifestation. It would have affected him one way or the other. So every part of his life's journey was important to him being the king of Israel. So also, I would like to point out um, the case of the case of or not the case. I would like to look at the life cycle of a butterfly. So a butterfly goes from an egg that is being laid to um to 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 being a caterpillar, from a caterpillar to a pupa, from a pupa, and then becomes a butterfly. So it goes through a process. If it misses one, it can't jump from being an egg to straight going to be a butterfly. It has to go through the different stages for it to become a butterfly. So you won't see the beautiful butterfly without without it going through the different stages. So also the beauty of our lives will come out from the different processes that God will allow us go through to get to the place that God has proposed for us in general. So what guarantees what and where God will take us to is how well we maximize our process season, how well we enjoy and maximize the place, the different stages, the different phases that God allows us to go through. So it is what guarantees us, what guarantees how well what God would give us, how would sustain what God would give us, and where God would take us to. So purpose cannot be achieved without going through a process. It is not possible to actually achieve purpose or fulfill purpose without going through a process. It is very, very important that we understand that we can't achieve purpose, we can't fulfill purpose except we go through a process season. So as much as we clamor for the beauty of the end, and then the end in this case is purpose, fulfilling destiny. As much as we clamor for the end, we can't get to the end. We can't see the beauty of the end except we go through a process season. So just like we'll see diamond or gold, how precious they are. Like everybody wants to have a diamond or a gold. Some people will die for it, some people will kill for it. But as much as it's beautiful, as much as it's valuable, it went through a process. That is why we would appreciate its beauty. So if you don't, if it doesn't go through a process in its raw state, it is not pleasing per se. It is not pleasing. It is not something that a lot of people accept because, okay, you know that when you have the raw gold, when it goes through a process, it becomes valuable and all of that. But without the knowledge of what the raw stage looks like, you wouldn't appreciate it. So you appreciate it when it goes through the process, and then gold or diamond goes through the process of mining, of exploration, of mining, of grinding, of separation before it becomes that beautiful piece that a lot of people can die for, a lot of people would kill for. So just like before gold will become a priceless jewelry, before it becomes that beautiful jewelry that a lot of people would kill for, like I said, it goes through a process of designing, it goes through a process of CAD, computer aided designs, designing over the systems, it goes through model making, it goes through rubber mold, waxing, casting, grinding, filing or assembly or pre-polishing. It goes through metal setting, polishing, quality control, and all of that. So it goes through all of these stages for it to be that beautiful jewelry that we would appreciate when we see it. So it's without the processes, it is not you won't appreciate it. You can't even appreciate it except it goes through all of these processes. So also for us to be valuable, for us to be priceless, for us to be beautiful in that place that God has called us for, we have to go through and we have to maximize all of the different processes that God would allow us go through. Like I said, our process is what makes us. So what makes you is the process that God allows you to go through. So it's we won't our beauty will come out of the different processes that God will allow us to go through. Our value, our uniqueness will come out from the place of process, enjoying and maximizing process. So we can't get to the place that God has called us for except we go through a process. So like I said, if I don't know what you're going through, I don't know if you're trying to give up on something, no matter what, stay glued to and then enjoy a process season. No matter how unpleasant it is, no matter how unpleasant it can be, enjoy the process, maximize the process by enduring, having patience, and then just time after your process season, we'll all come and celebrate your beauty, we'll come and celebrate your uniqueness, and we'll celebrate your value also. So destiny is so important, it's so delicate that we can't be skipping or jumping phases. We can't skip phases or seasons or processes. It is so important. So we have to maximize each and every phase of our life, each and every phase of our destinies, because that is what makes us. So one thing also for us to note is that process is distinct. It means that process is peculiar to each and every one of us. So my process season is peculiar to me, and then yours is peculiar to you, depending on your purpose, depending on your destiny. So even if we have similar assignments on earth, similar purposes, we still definitely have to go through different process seasons. For example, I have a twin brother, and then because we're twins, it doesn't mean that we have to go through the same process season. He would go through his process season, and then I'll go through mine, because our destinies are different. So we all need to understand that our process seasons are peculiar to each and every one of us. So we wouldn't expect to experience the same thing Mr. A is experiencing or Mrs. A is experiencing. We have to understand that each and every one of us will have to maximize our process seasons differently. What happens to you wouldn't necessarily have to happen to me. I wouldn't have to go through the same process. For example, a businessman in the 90s would say, oh, he started his business. Even if he's still successful today, he would say, oh, he started his business in a certain way. He had to go through a process before he got to the pinnacle of his career or his business. And then you wouldn't say, oh, I have to start the same way, I have to do the same things, go through the same process he went through. It's might not be applicable to you. It might mean that maybe if he started his business in a shop or on the streets, yours can be online, yours can be somewhere else, depending on the process that God wants you to go through. So each and every one of us will go through a peculiar process. It means that your process is peculiar to you, and then mine to me. So there's one thing that we have to understand. So one of the worst mistakes that can happen is us trying to enforce someone else's process on ourselves. For example, let's say you have a mentor that you've read, or someone you've read his biographies and all of that, and then because you love them, you want to still experience some of the things they've experienced, some of the things they experience while journeying through destiny, while journeying through life. So it is one of the tragedy of that is that we limit God in a certain way because we want to enforce something else that isn't part of his design for our lives. So each and every one of us will go through a distinct process season. So no matter how much you love a mentor, no matter how much you admire a mentor, no matter how much you want to be like a mentor, you cannot enforce their own process seasons upon yourself. Even throughout scriptures, different ministers of the gospel of Jesus were called differently. They went through a process they went through different processes. So we also have to go through a different process before we can get to the place that God has called us for. So we the only thing we can do with mentors is that we can learn some of the principles that they applied, and then mind you, I use the word principles. You can use some of the principles that they applied towards getting to where God has called them for, and then it might work for us, and then probably wouldn't work for some people. But enjoying our own distinct process season, so we can learn from their processes, we can be motivated by it, we can be inspired by it, but we cannot enforce their own process season upon ourselves. We cannot want to experience the same things they experience to get to have the same type of results that they experience. Ours might be distinct. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that our uniqueness will come from our process, from what God will allow us to go through. That is our process season. And then, in summary of all that I've been saying, for us to get to the place that God has called us for, one of the things we have to do is to stay glued to God, trust Him to teach us, to guide us, to instruct us on what to do to get to the place that He has called us. Because He's the one with the blueprint, and then He's the one that has everything lined up for each and every one of us. So we have to stay with Him to get all that He has proposed for us, to get to the place that He has called us for. So at this point in time, I would call it a day. And then thank you so much for everyone that stayed through, for listening, for watching, and then for sharing, commenting, liking, and all of that. Also, if you've don't forget to follow our social media pages: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. And then you can stream on Spotify and FM and the different platforms that you'll be watching or listening to this from. Thank you so much for joining. Do have an amazing week, depending on when you're watching this. If it's during the weekend, enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much. This is Ochoche Emmanuel. Thank you.